Hello and welcome back to the shop. I decided it was high time I start making progress on the workbench again. So today I'm going to show you how I installed these dogs in the bench top. They don't drop down if you push them up. Now I had flattened the individual sides of my bench, but never flattened the top after the final assembly, so I do that with the router sled before installing the dogs. I talk a lot about the design and theory and testing of this dog design in this video, so check that out if you want a refresher since it's been a little while. But very briefly, the theory is that I want circular dogs that are also capable of being held in an elevated position, and that's accomplished with an embedded magnet that's going to be buried in this walnut strip that I'm working on right now. Now I meant to plane these down to a 1/2 inch for a nice snug fit with the recess that I'll route in the bench, but I went a little too far, so I need to make the shape that I want from 2 1/8 inch thick pieces with a 1/4 inch in between, which worked out okay. And I'm more careful to sneak up on a snug fit as I go. Now this recess and strip continues into the vise, so before making it I clamp in some hacksaw blades. This will allow me to separate the vise and the bench with a pull saw when I'm finished. And then I route the groove with a series of shallow passes. I start the cut inside the bench, which seemed a little safer, more fence registration, and then I just come back with a saw and chisel to finish out the recess. Then I round one end of the walnut strip and drill holes for the magnets. It'll be buried in the bench, nobody will see it. So somehow I lost a video of the next step, which was to glue these large magnets into those holes that I just drilled, and then glue the walnut strips into the recess in the bench. So I've done all that at this point, and I'm just flushing it up with the plane. Now the next step is going to be drilling dog holes, but before I do that I put in some sacrificial material into the recess, the smaller recess in the walnut, so that I don't damage either side of it when I'm drilling. And I use my allegedly perpendicular drilling apparatus to first drill the larger hole for the top of the dogs, and then the 3/4 hole for the posts. And it turned out that exactly 3/4 was a little too small. I was lucky to have a 49/64 inch drill bit that I could widen things out and get a really perfect fit that's snug but still loose enough that it can move. And you can see the dog being held up well by the magnet. Now these holes are close to concentric and parallel, but not exactly, so the dogs don't all fit, and the ones that don't, I fine tune until they drop into place. And once they do, I mark the line that will be the flat face on the dog. Now under clamping force, the post will move out of perpendicular slightly, so I measure that angle. It's only 1 degree, but I set the table on my table saw to just a little bit more than that to cut the flat face on the dog to compensate for this tilting that happens under clamping force. You notice I left a little bit of space. That's for a rubber pad that'll be on the flat face of the dog. You can glue in and flush up a final walnut strip so that the bench is a complete flat surface. Now one last thing to do, these dog holes double as holes for a holdfast, but with such a thick workbench, they don't jam enough to actually get a grip, so I need to drill some holes on the bottom to remove about 1 inch of material, just so that the holdfasts wedge in enough that they grip the wood and I get a good hold. Now I can separate the vise from the bench with pull saw and flush up the dogs before sanding everything. Now before putting on finish, I'm coating both sides of the vise with this rubber cork material. Now I'm going to do a dedicated video on this stuff, but I'm going to be selling it with my vise eventually because I've done a bunch of tests and this stuff is better than anything that I can find currently being sold. And the flat face of the dog is covered in the same material. Now it's time to clean things up and apply some finish. Some finish for the dog also, and we're done.